here. Natalie Barnes, who was helping take money at the door, and Will Wagner, I know I saw you. There you go. Thank you, Will. I'd like to thank Alpha News for taking care of the live stream and for Fox 9 and the Star Tribune for covering this event. If you guys need restrooms during the event, they are right in the back of the room there to the right of the guitars. You'll all see in front of me here my big, beautiful barcode. If you scan that barcode, it'll take you to the CD2 website where you can donate money, volunteer to help the Republican Party, things like that. You can also stay up to date on other events that we're sponsoring around the district. I'd like to introduce Taylor Rahm. Taylor was the 2024 endorsed CD2 candidate for Congress. He was a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. He's also a local attorney, and we figured he'd be the best person tonight to litigate or moderate this debate. So Taylor Rahm, thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate Joe making me look tough, but I think these candidates will agree I will go easy on them tonight. And it is an honor to be here tonight with all of you that are here tonight at Bogart's here in Apple Valley, and for all of you watching from live stream at home. I know we're very fortunate to have three great candidates that are taking their time to be here tonight to answer several questions and tell you their vision of where they see Minnesota heading in the future when one of them becomes governor. So I just want to briefly go through the ground rules so you guys kind of know the guidelines of how tonight goes, and then other than that, hopefully you won't hear much from me outside of asking the questions, as we want to reserve the majority of the time for the candidates here. But just so you guys know, the way it's going to go is we're going to start with opening statements. Each candidate is going to get 5 minutes for their opening remarks. We will then move to questions. Each candidate gets 2 minutes to answer the question they are asked, and they each have two little cards at their desk, which reserves them an additional 30 seconds if at any time they decide they would like to raise that. I will honor that. I will be paying attention, so I see if any of them raise that card, and they will get 30 seconds from there. We've got a great clock guy here in the front that's easy for myself and the candidates to see when their time is up, and then we will finish with closing remarks, or closing arguments, which they each get 3 minutes. So obviously the three candidates here tonight are Kendall Qualls, Speaker Lisa Demuth, and Patrick Knight. So we are going to start here with opening remarks with Kendall Qualls. So I will recognize Mr. Qualls for 5 minutes.
All right, fellow Republicans, we're supposed to be the responsible party, the grown-up party, the party that gets results. But it hasn't happened in 20 years, not just for the governor's seat, any statewide seat. We need a new strategy. I want to make a case for a new set of candidates. Two business leaders, my running mate and myself, that have never held public office, never wanted to, but wanting to save our state. Two business leaders that have experience in actually building businesses, running businesses, large organizations. Okay. Well, I'm not going to sit down. I'll just do this. How about that? Okay. And it's important for me to stand on this, my opening statement, because this is critical and it's important for me. Because the message I want to communicate is this. We need a drastic strategy change. We can't keep getting the same results. My friends, many of you know this. Minnesota is on the cusp of falling economically irreversible decline. If we wind up losing this next election, we've lost the state. We need something different. That's why I want to make the case for my running mate and myself, two business leaders outside the state of outside the politics of Minnesota. So let me give you my background. Some of you know my background already. Many of you don't. I started my life in poverty. Lived with my divorced mother in Harlem, New York City, from first grade to fifth grade, and when I was 10 years old, I moved with my father in a trailer park in Oklahoma. I worked full-time to pay my way through college. I served on active duty for 5 years as an artillery officer, served in the DMZ right in South and North Korea. After that, I led sales and marketing teams for Fortune 100 companies, small teams as well as corporate responsibility. My wife and I have been married for 40 years this coming May. We raised 5 kids together. We adopted one of them. I can't remember which one. We love them all the same. Okay. And now they're starting their own families right here in Minnesota. I have a daughter that's getting married this Saturday. We have been absolutely blessed by God and this country. And so I've experienced the American dream. My running mate experienced the American dream himself. But we come from different backgrounds, different paths of life, different generations. But we've arrived at the same destination with the same mission to rescue the state we love and for the future of our families and the future of your families. So that's where we are. And I want to make a case and paint a picture for the future of our state. So I want to accelerate to the general election. We have 2 options. As delegates, Republican delegates that are in the room, 2 options. Do we stay conventional like we always have and select a candidate from the legislature like we always have and not been successful? And I know it's tough because it's always comfortable to stay with what we know. But Minnesota is not in a comfortable position. Okay? If we lose it this time, we've lost it. Stay with the conventional or do something bold and select candidates that have been in business for decades and know how to run large organizations, but most importantly, know how to hold people accountable. So here's the picture. Our legislator against their legislator. Our politician against their 20-year politician, a sitting U.S. senator. Or 2 business leaders outside the world of politics that have been running businesses for decades when the state is on the precipice of losing economically. That's the difference we have between the 2 candidates. My friends, we have an opportunity. If you select the Qualls-Nicholson ticket, we have an opportunity not only to win the governorship, but we're going to pursue the first trifecta for the Republican Party since 1969. The Senate is led by the Democrats only by 1 seat. We're tied in the House. This is not time to be content and satisfied with winning the bronze medal. My friends, we're Americans. It's this time to go for the gold medal, be like the champions we are, because Americans are meant to dream big, be bold, and make the impossible possible. If we work together, my friends, we can save the state we love for the first time in decades, and I'm asking you to join me. Thank you.
And
I'll sit for the rest of them now.
Now Speaker Lisa Demuth.
Well, good evening. I am going to remain seated because that's what our camera crew is asking for in the back, so they can continue to see through the live stream. My name is Lisa Demuth. I have the honor of being with you tonight. Thank you for showing up. You may know me as Speaker of the House in the state of Minnesota. You may know my record of breaking the Democrat trifecta in the 2024 election and bringing a little bit of balance back, literal balance and a tie, back to the House of Representatives. But I'm going to take these first few minutes to let you know about Lisa Demuth, the person that probably never thought that she would be sitting here as Speaker of the House and candidate for governor. I'm born and raised in Minnesota. Minnesota matters very much to me. My husband Nick and I have 4 adult children and 7 grandchildren, all in the state of Minnesota, and it matters where our state is headed for my family and yours. I was born in Paynesville, think central Minnesota, in the late 60s. I'm biracial. My dad is black, my mom is white. It was legal for them to be married in Minnesota, but it wasn't yet legal for them to be married in the entire United States. I was called the N-word almost every day of first grade. I've got a great family that supported me, but the community, there were problems in there. My parents decided to move to the Minneapolis area, so when I was 7, we moved to South Minneapolis. My mom worked very, very hard, ended up being a single mom, and she worked hard and provided an excellent, excellent life for me. We moved multiple places. I went to 8 different schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, because of housing. So I know what it is like when there are housing challenges too. But I'm proud to say that I am a business owner. Again, you heard a little bit about my family. We moved back to the Paynesville area and then the Cold Spring area where we've been for, in the same house, almost 30 years. As a small business owner, I know exactly how hard things can be with mandates put on by the state. I never saw myself as being in public service, but in 2007, there were 3 spots open on my local school board. One incumbent had filed, and so I did what anyone would do. I tore that article out of the paper, and I left it at my husband's place for dinner. And I said, hey, you need to run for the school board. And he said, I would never do that. You do it. My immediate response was, I can't do that. And he asked the best question, why not? I had never thought of it. I stepped into that running as a write-in in my first election. 4 people for 3 spots and won. Served for 3 full terms, and in 2018 wasn't going to be doing anything else until my local representative was going to be running for an open Senate seat. He contacted me. His wife remembered that our boys had played hockey together and said, have you ever thought of running for the House of Representatives? I said, no, it's never crossed my mind. You guys fight too much and you don't get anything done. He said, and I apologize, stop watching the news, and yes, we do. I ran my first election for the legislature in 2018, winning. I've served for 4 terms, 3 in the minority. Carried one of my first bills was about fraud. Democrats did not want to hear anything about fraud. As soon as I became minority leader in 2023 during the Democrat trifecta, I said, hold on, House Republicans, we are going to end this trifecta together in 24. We were the only legislative race on the ticket. We won with a tie, flipping a northern Minnesota Iron Range seat that had been held by a Democrat for 96 years. I have a winning record of getting things done. As Speaker of the House, I fought with the Democrats to establish the Fraud Prevention and Agency Oversight Committee, securing that to make sure people knew there was fraud. My vision, along with my running mate, Ryan Wilson, have a vision to turn this state back around, make it stronger and better. Excellent education for our kids, because right now we are failing our kids. Ending fraud, lowering our taxes, making Minnesota a place that people can stay. I have a hope and a future, and I am ready to lead this state. My name is Lisa Demuth. Thank you for being here.
All right, in 5 minutes for Patrick Knight.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Taylor, and thank you to Joe Ditto and CD2, and thank you for all of you for coming this evening. My name is Patrick Knight, running for governor. Be honest, how many people before tonight had no idea who I was? Raise your hand. Okay, maybe 20%, it's getting better. But by the way, that's the definition of an outsider. Patrick Knight, running for governor. I grew up in Plymouth. I was raised by 2 great parents that taught me the value of hard work, responsibility, service, and fighting for what you believe in. And that's why I'm running for governor. I'm fighting for Minnesota families who are struggling. It's harder to find a job. It's harder to afford a house. Parents worry whether or not their kids are getting a good education. Neighborhoods feel less safe. I'm running because I'm tired of the fraud. There's so much fraud, and it feels like we're still not doing anything to hold people accountable. And I'm done with Republicans losing statewide race year after year after year for the last 20 years. And so I did what I always do when I see a problem and I think I can make an impact. I step in and I take action. That's what I did as a Marine Corps officer for 20 years. I started out as a judge advocate, a prosecutor, but I thought I could make a bigger impact in infantry. So I switched to infantry, became a company commander in charge of 200 men. Back then, infantry was all male. And I learned about leadership, sacrifice, being part of something bigger than yourself. That's what I did in private industry. After active duty, I went to Cargill as an analyst, but I thought I could make a bigger impact in leadership. So I entered the management track, and eventually had a different company, became CEO of a food manufacturing company. And that's what I did as a parent. When I was a kid growing up, I played football, basketball, and baseball. But my 4 kids, being born in Minnesota, said, if you need to make an impact, you got to do it in hockey. So I learned how to play hockey and coached them for 15 years. But Minnesota needs action. We don't need more talk. We don't need more political theater. We don't need more committees. We need results. One of my favorite quotes is from General George Patton. An 80% plan executed aggressively today is better than the perfect plan executed tomorrow. We need action because Minnesotans are struggling. When a hardworking Minnesotan does everything right, he or she pays her taxes, works hard, loves her neighbor, loves her family, lives within their means, and still can't get by, there is something fundamentally wrong with the state. And there are Minnesota families who are hurting, and some are losing hope. And so we need to take action. And I've got a plan to do it. And it's based on the fundamentals, 5 core fundamentals, the fundamentals that create success for any society across time and space in history. 5 things. Number 1, affordability. We need to make Minnesota affordable again. Number 2, economic and job growth. We need a strong, resilient economy. Number 3, great education for our kids. We need to fix education by focusing on results. Number 4, safe streets by focusing on the rule of law and public safety. And number 5, good governance. A smaller, stronger state government that delivers for all Minnesotans. And that is doable. We have to get a governor who will roll up his sleeves and fight like hell every day for the fundamentals. And that's what I will do. And what will the state look like if we do that? Well, a young couple, or whether it's you or your kids or a young couple, they can afford to buy a house. And if they're blessed with children, they can afford childcare. And if they send their kids to public school, they will feel confident those kids are getting a first-class education. And if they park their car in the driveway, particularly here in the metro, they'll know it will be here in the morning. And if they work hard, they're going to have opportunities to make more money and live a fruitful life and spend some on their children and their grandchildren. And that's not a lot to ask for. And we should demand that. And I have hope, because most of us here lived in Minnesota 8 years ago. We are the same people we were 8 years ago. We haven't changed. What has changed is the governor in St. Paul, and we need to make a change there. Got 30 seconds left, so let me wrap with this. We are in the process of hiring a new CEO for the state. And I ask you to keep in mind 2 questions. And we've got 3 good candidates up here with different leadership styles, different governance philosophies. First question to consider: who can win the general election and expand the base? And number 2, who, once in office, can actually deliver results? Thank you.
All right, we are going to move into the question section of the forum debate here, which each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer the question. And I want to thank all the candidates for staying within their times on opening statements. Please continue to do that. And for the candidates, if at any time you need me to repeat the question, if you're second or third in line, just please let me know and I'll be happy to do that. So we are going to start with question 1. And first up for answering this will be Kendall Qualls. Some say midterm elections are about turnout, and this year gives Minnesota Republicans a real chance to re-energize voters. With some voters frustrated that state government keeps growing, no matter which party is in charge, whether it's publicly funded abortions in the HHS omnibus bills, continued spending on fraudulent programs like CCAP, or major Democrat budget increases. Given that, what positive vision can Republicans offer to inspire voters and show that meaningful fiscal change is within reach?
Well, absolutely. So one of the things that addresses this, how can we manage the fiscal responsibility, but also, I think embedded in that question, in this midterm, how do we excite people to turn out? Number 1, we have a different candidate profile that we haven't had in 20 years. 2 outsiders, 2 guys that love the state, are only getting in because we want to help rescue the state of Minnesota. I'm not running against any of these other good people. I'm running to save and rescue the state of Minnesota, and that's what Brian Nicholson is doing as well. I met Brian on the campaign trail. He was CEO of a manufacturing company, and he had a love for this state that got him into this. And how we turn this around physically is this: we have to win our trifecta. If we only get the governor's seat, we can't do radical changes back to normal. You're basically captain of a sinking ship, because the Paid Family Leave Act, the high taxes. We won't be able to change those things. Businesses will continue to leave, the jobs will leave, your friends and family will leave, and your grandchildren will leave. Where the jobs go, the people go. And we can only make those radical changes of normalcy if we control the levers of power. So that's number one. And how we do that, I have a plan for that. I'll have it in my closing statement for you, and you'll love it.
Thank you. And now Lisa Demuth.
When I look at the opportunity that we have in 2026, think with me on this. It is the governor, lieutenant governor, every constitutional officer, the entire Minnesota House, the entire Minnesota Senate, and 1 U.S. Senate seat. That is what we have ahead of us as Republicans, but as a state. This is the perfect opportunity for change. When I was considering running for governor, I first asked the question, is there a pathway forward for a Republican to win in this state? Governor Pawlenty had been majority leader in the legislature, in the House of Representatives, and he won. It is time to turn that around. When I said yes, I said I'm ready to defeat any Democrat, whether it is Tim Walz or if he is replaced. Clearly, it is not Tim Walz now. Beating Amy Klobuchar is absolutely positive. How do we do that? First of all, we make sure every Republican statewide turns out, because in the last midterm in 2022, we had 200,000 Republicans that didn't show up to vote. So we turn everyone out to vote by being excited for our pathway forward. We also can bump those numbers up in the suburbs. I am from Greater Minnesota. My running mate, Ryan Wilson, is from Maple Grove, from the suburbs. We also know we can bump those numbers up in the metro area, just fractions. But it is a winning message, not just the best candidate, but a winning message also. Common sense, meaning that we will support life, we'll make Minnesota more affordable, we'll make sure to protect our Second Amendment rights, and that girls don't belong in boys' sports. No. Boys don't belong in girls' sports. Boys do not belong in girls' bathrooms. Those are common sense things that people are looking for. That is a message we can bring forward that is going to excite people to vote for a Republican. That is why I'm running. It is doable.
Patrick Knight.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Some say midterm elections are about turnout, and this year gives Minnesota Republicans a real chance to re-energize voters. With some voters frustrated that state government keeps growing no matter which party is in charge, whether it's publicly funded abortions in the HHS omnibus bills, continued spending on fraudulent programs like CCAP, or major Democrat budget increases. Given that, what positive vision can Republicans offer to inspire voters and show that meaningful fiscal change is within reach?
Thank you. You know, the other day I was talking to somebody who claimed he was a Republican, and he said, you know, Republicans are not going to beat Amy Klobuchar, so we need to play it safe and just try to hold on to the Senate. To which I say, BS. The facts are on our side, the values on our side, the solutions are on our side. 2026 is a huge opportunity. We need to have the mindset of going in to win. And the way we do that is by focusing on the 5 core fundamentals I mentioned earlier, because those are the foundation of human flourishing. Societies that have those 5 foundational elements flourish across time, across history, regardless of which continent they're based on. And we need to focus on that like a laser, because they benefit every Minnesotan, regardless of how they vote, what they look like, where they live. People just want to live their life. And the benefit of the 5 foundational elements, which I'll go over again at the risk of boring you, they can be boring, which is affordability, economic growth, education, rule of law, and good governance. The key to that, it benefits everybody, and it puts people, not government, at the center of the story. If those foundational elements are in place, people don't need government. For some reason, the current government in St. Paul thinks it's a good thing. By the more people that are dependent on government handouts, the better. It should be the exact opposite. So I think we've got the right message. Get the foundations in place so people can thrive.
Thank you, and we will go right back to you, Patrick, for question number 2. Health insurance premiums remain a major burden for Minnesota families, affecting both their budgets and their access to care. What specific steps would you take to lower costs, improve competition, and ensure that people can get high-quality care without being priced out of the system?
You know, healthcare is a very complex topic. It's driven a lot by the federal government. And I don't think there's anybody in the room that truly understands the full entire healthcare system in the United States, including myself. But I think there's things that the state can do, which is push more price transparency, more market incentives for consumers to pick services that fit their needs at a reasonable cost. But ultimately, the solution is to get a strong, growing economy. Almost 60% of Minnesotans get their health care through employer-sponsored plans. The more we've got a stronger economy with better jobs and more growth, the less people are going to be dependent on public medical systems, and the more they're on private systems through their employer, and that's the best thing we can do. And our economy, by the way, is flatlining. We've got roughly the same number of jobs in Minnesota today that we did pre-pandemic. More people are leaving the state, more Americans are leaving Minnesota than coming. It was interesting on social media recently, Pivot Bio, which is a company that just recently decided to move from California to Minnesota. You would have thought we won the lottery based on the social media posts by Governor Qualls. And that's great that this company moved to Minnesota. But it's just a drop in a bucket. Their total staff moving to Minnesota is 50 people. Companies have 50 states to choose from in which to do business. We are doing everything we can to make it harder for companies to do business here, whether it's the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, whether it's the corporate income taxes, whether it's the Earned Sick and Safe Time Act, whether it's the fraud at the state government level, which is a marker for investors. I don't want to go there. So I think we can do much better.
Mrs. Speaker?
When we look at healthcare costs rising, part of that is because of the state mandates that are put on healthcare companies to cover things that shouldn't be covered or things that are unaffordable. That drives up our cost. We also have to look at our economy overall here in the state of Minnesota. When we look at paid family leave, earned sick and safe time, delays in permitting, that makes it a harder business economy to do anything here in the state. When we have an opportunity for our businesses to actually reduce their cost and invest in ways that best serves them to serve their employees with benefits such as health care, those become recruitment and retention tools that businesses really need. Also, looking at healthcare costs, one of the things that I was able to accomplish for our state as Speaker of the House was ending health care for illegal immigrants, and that is taxpayer funding of health care for illegal immigrants. Even with just a tie in the House of Representatives, I was able to bring that forward. When the Democrats passed that back in 2023, it started January of 25. They said there would be 5,000 people on that program taking advantage of it. In 4 short months, we were at 20,000 illegal immigrants on taxpayer-funded health care here in the state of Minnesota. That was unaffordable. That makes us a magnet for those kind of services. By ending that, I was able to help keep our health care costs down and save the taxpayers money by ending that program in the state of Minnesota. That is how we keep our health care down. Less mandates and doing the right thing for people that are working hard in their jobs.
Mr. Qualls.
Yeah, I think there's a point of clarification, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong. That health care that was eliminated for illegal immigrants for adults is still kept in place for children. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
That is for anyone under the age of 18 was the negotiation that took place with the tie.
Okay, so it's not completely eliminated.
Ending the health care for 18 and over are the most expensive,
Okay.
and we ended that for 20,000 Minnesotans.
Okay. Well, I have friends, and many of you do have friends that came here legally from India, from other countries. They have to sign a waiver that get no government benefits. They take 8 years to get U.S. citizenship. Their kids are not covered. Their kids don't get free. How we do this in politics is, I believe, not full truths to tell everyone. Right now, Hennepin County Medical Center is bankrupt. They have $100 million of unpaid medical expenses. Whether it's an adult or a child, it doesn't matter who's going to bail them out. All of us. Part of our expensive health care is that we have people that are getting services that shouldn't. Number two, a part of our healthcare system, we need to go to a more market-driven healthcare system. I was never a proponent of Obamacare. I didn't vote for him either time. We were warning people he's faking you out, he's a fraud. Listen, we did the Obamacare Affordable Care Act. Now the Affordable Care Act, 15 years later, needs subsidies for people to afford it. We need to go back to a market-based system. My friends, all of our states are 50 laboratories of experiments, and we need to experiment, and I got solutions on how we can reduce healthcare costs. I've been in the healthcare industry for 30 years. I know how to bring choices around that to help lower costs, and we can do it in our state of Minnesota.
Thank you, all of you, for those answers, and we will go to question 3, and we will start with Kendall. Education costs continue to rise across Minnesota while student outcomes decline. Parents are asking for both higher quality education and more choice in where they send their children to learn. What specific steps would you take to improve outcomes, expand options for families, and ensure that students receive the education they deserve in the state of Minnesota?
This is near and dear to my heart. My wife and I, we homeschooled our 5 kids from K through 12. They're now young adults. They have jobs. They're helping as taxpayers, and they're starting their own families. We even started a private Christian school in Richfield last year, where we subsidized 90% of the cost for poor working class families by doing fundraising and helping to subsidize those costs. This is so important to us. Look, when I went through school in inner city New York and rural Oklahoma in the 70s, I got a better education to be competitive in Fortune 100 companies than our kids are getting today and across the entire state of Minnesota. 50% of the kids, our kids, cannot read at grade level. Not 50% of kids in Minneapolis, I'm talking across our state. We are doing them a disservice and we're robbing them of their future. So number one, school choice for parents. Parents decide where their kids go, okay? With little to no coattails of government mandates to go with that. Number two, we bring back vocational education in the high schools. It never should have left. Okay, not everyone needs to go to college or wants to go to college. That's not the only route to be successful. That's number two. Number three, I would waive the teachers' requirements for professionals to come back if they want to teach in public schools, if they've been a CPA for 10 plus years or more, if they've been a nurse. There's no better teacher than those that have done it in their entire lives and that want to teach. We have some innovative ways to do this. This is the private sector solution process of how we do it. We've been doing it in the private sector for a long time. My friends, one of the most expensive things that we have going on in our public schools, we have more administrators now than we do have teachers. Their teachers are getting the shaft and our students are getting the shaft. Our budgets are going much higher, and because we have more administrative staff than we do have frontline teachers, and we're going to fix that as well. Looking forward to it, actually.
Lisa, you have 2 minutes.
Perfect, thank you. When I look at the results of education here in the state of Minnesota, only 53% of our kids can even read at grade level. That is a failure. Our kids need the education that they deserve, an excellent education to prepare them for whatever is next, whether it is college, a trade school, or going into the workforce. That is what our kids deserve. But parents know the education choice that is best for their family, whether it is homeschooling, public school, or charter school. I remember being on the school board and needing to balance the budget, each budget cycle for the school board. But in 2023, the Democrats, along with Governor Qualls, added 65 new mandates to our schools, unfunded mandates, and said you must do this. I just met with local school leaders from my district, and they talked about needing to make $1 million of cuts. or a couple of $100,000 of cuts because of paid family medical leave, because of other mandates that are put on. The way that we improve education here in Minnesota is we first of all make sure that our teachers, our future teachers going through our colleges and universities are prepared to teach kids how to think, not what to think, and getting rid of the woke ideology and back to the basics of reading, math, science, just the basics of education. But right now, through the One Big Beautiful Bill, there's an opportunity, a scholarships opportunity, SGOs, where it is no cost to the state, and we could opt in as a state that would provide, if you give $1,700, you get that back fully in a tax credit. That can go to the school of your choice to help kids. It can go to public, private, charter, to help kids with tutoring, with any extra activities, and yet our state, our governor, will not opt into that. We have a bill right now to do it. If he doesn't opt into it, when I am elected as governor, if that hasn't happened, that will be one of the first things that I do, opt into options.
Patrick, you have 2 minutes.
My wife, Kate, and I, we've got 4 kids, 2 in college, 2 still in Minnesota public schools. All 4 of our kids went up through and graduated, or the 2 have graduated from Minnesota public schools, and we've kept a close eye on their education. You can see a trend line every year where the quality and the time off keeps on increasing for whatever reason, but the quality of the education goes down and down. We put mastery underneath participation. Participation's here, mastery's here. We need to invert that. There's actually a 2020 case in California where a student graduated from high school with a B average, and he was illiterate. And that's what happens when you put participation over mastery. We need to get back to mastery. And the way we do that is get back to core curricula. We get back to getting kids focused on reading by 3rd grade, like Mississippi and many other states who are now surpassing us in school ratings. We get back to discipline. In 2023, the state passed legislation, and Walls signed it into law, that makes it much more difficult for teachers to get control over their classroom. We need less mandates from the state so that teachers are not overwhelmed trying to teach everything but the core curricula. And we need to explore vocational schools. College is not the answer for everybody's life. In fact, there's plenty of demand for vocations right now. And by the way, I see this as, when I worked in food manufacturing, we're only as good as the people that we hire. And when I hired people that had a hard time just putting sentences together, it makes it much more difficult to compete with companies based in other states that have better education systems. And thank you, Lisa, for mentioning that $1,700 tax credit. Plenty of Democrat states are taking it. For whatever reason, we're reluctant to do it. I think that's a massive disservice to our children. Thank you.
Hey, Tyler. Oh, yes. We'll recognize Mr. Qualls for 30 seconds.
Yeah, education's huge for me. But one of the other things that we got to remember, not just the principles of education, what's happening in our schools today, they're indoctrinating our kids, they hate their country. We got to fix that big time. My friends, our children don't know the virtues of our nation. They know all the sins of our nation, but none of its virtues, and that's deliberate. They're training them as social justice warriors, and we got to fix that. And we're going to. I'm the only one that had their office firebombed for fighting back on that issue.
All right, and before we move on to question 4, which we will start with Mr. Knight, I just want to make a point of clarification, given that one of those cards has been exercised. Given that a direct question was asked to Ms. Demuth, which she was expected to answer, I am not counting that as one of her cards, so she still has 2 remaining. Minnesota is known for its strong mining and manufacturing sectors, but we also take great pride in our natural resources and outdoor heritage. How would you balance economic growth with protecting the land of 10,000 lakes for future generations?
That's a great question. I, as a kid, grew up going to the Boundary Waters almost every summer with my dad and my cousins and my sisters, and it's just a pristine treasure. At the same time, we are a state that needs jobs, and Up on the Iron Range, there are plenty of precious minerals, rare earths, and so forth that can help generate those jobs. So I don't see it as an either or. I see it as a both and. We can have strong economic growth while protecting the boundary waters. The biggest issue is sulfide ore mining, copper, nickel. And when the sulfide ore gets exposed to oxygen, it creates sulfur dioxide, which has the potential of damaging the water systems. So I think it creates a higher risk. And so what the state can do is set higher standards. And I think the state can set credible, consistent regulations so developers, the mines, know what they're facing. And then when they make the investment, they know what the return on investment can be. I was talking to somebody yesterday, a banker, who was describing that his clients now in Minnesota factor in a premium risk if they're going to do business in Minnesota. Not just in mining, but whatever they're going to do. Because the state is poorly run. Manufacturers, companies are concerned that if they open a plant here, first of all, it's going to take a long time with the permitting timelines. Number two, there's a concern that if the Democrats remain in power, they're just going to continue to raise taxes and fees every 2 years. More people are going to move out, so the labor pool is going to get smaller. Minnesota is making it so hard for businesses, and I lived that as a CEO of a manufacturing company. I would go to events, and I talked to companies based in other states, and I always walked away feeling, this is so unfair. A company based in Texas, their tax rate is better, their business climate is better. We're making it so hard for businesses to compete here. We need more jobs.
Ms. Demuth.
Mining in Minnesota can be done better and safer than any place in the world. We have done it for years. It is time to reopen it. We have the ability to mine the rare earth minerals that we all depend on for the comforts that we have, phones, batteries, cars, all of the above, and it can be done very safe. One thing I want to make sure everyone understands is if you hear anyone saying that there is mining going on in the boundary waters, that is untrue. There is no mining going on in the boundary waters. I also believe while we look at mining and growing our economy in that way, we have to take good care of our natural resources. We have been blessed with much goodness here in Minnesota, and we have a responsibility to take care of that. Part of taking care of it is going to be, when I am governor, selecting correct commissioners that are going to be responsible. So think MPCA, so pollution control, think DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, commissioners that are going to look at the benefits that we have and not impede the growth, but taking good care of things. Sometimes our commissioners operate in silos, and that is not good for any of us. As governor, what I would like to see is commissioners that can understand the other areas of jurisdiction so that they're working together for all of Minnesota instead of separately. That also goes to our agriculture. We can't be holding back our agriculture in ways that make it harder for those areas to grow and increase in our economy in that way. But we've got great natural resources that we are grateful for and have to take care of. And we need to expand our economy and safely mine here in the state of Minnesota.
Mr. Qualls, you have 2 minutes.
Yep, I got a chance to talk with one of the general managers of our mines in Iron Range. And he's telling me they've been waiting over 20 years to get the permitting approved. 20 years. Now, one of the things that we have to understand as Republicans, because we own what's happened to this state, even though we haven't been in control and we've had partial control, at the end of the day, we have to take some ownership. It starts with understanding who your opponent is. When your opponent comes out of the closet and calls themselves Democrats, Socialists of America, we got to understand what that means. That's anti-capitalism, anti-American, and they don't care if no jobs are created, or if capitalism doesn't happen, or if they move to another state, because all funnels and decisions are going to be made through government. That's the objective. The ones that are not part of that Democrat Social of America, they call themselves moderate Democrats, they're too afraid to stand up against them. So basically, the parties run from the top down in Washington, D.C., all the way down to our school boards by this social agenda of anti-capitalism. This is not about approving mining to make sure it's safe. It's their agenda. It's not just mining. You talk to farmers, you talk to anyone in greater Minnesota, manufacturing, it's all the same process. Permitting is almost doubled for some farmers from timing of getting things approved. We can do things, great things, but we have to understand who our opponents are and address the issues deliberately and understand that this is an agenda to put a thumb on the scale of growth and actually control this state as a one-party state, just like they have in Illinois, just like they have in California. They're not going to negotiate with us. That's why we got to win control of all levers, the Senate, the House, and the governor's seat. Thank you.
And we will go right back to you for the next question, Mr. Qualls. As governor, you'll have the authority to appoint commissioners and board members, including post-board members and leaders of state agencies, to serve in your administration. How will you approach building your team and selecting the people to lead these agencies?
Well, first of all, you're right, because we're going to have to clean out the house of what we currently have. That we have a house of unaccountable commissioners, and I don't even call them leaders. No one's been held accountable for this fraud. No one's been fired at a commissioner level. It's absolutely disastrous. And everyone knows what's happened in our state government. It's a culture of corruption and unaccountability. So we have to clean house. And we have to look for people that have experience and leadership and accountability. And at the end of the day, you'll just do something in the Reagan administration. When someone signed an offer letter, they also signed the resignation letter, because you serve at the will of the people of Minnesota and the governor. If you do something that's out of line, inconsistent with the strategies and standards, thank you for your service. We're going to activate your resignation letter. It is about accountability and making things happen. I have an action plan in the first 2 years as control of the trifecta, and it is about action and accountability in the private sector way. It's leadership, accountability, and basic tax. I'm going to give credit to Patrick's boring plan. It's about execution on the principles. The same thing that all of us do in our day jobs. We do it every day. This is not that difficult.
Speaker Demuth.
The opportunity to make appointments as governor is something that is not to be taken lightly. I've already mentioned the idea of having commissioners that would understand the other areas rather than just working separately in silos. But when I think about the post board, the police officer standard training board, I think of law enforcement in that way. And we have to make sure that the people that are being selected to serve on boards or commissions actually fit and understand the work and the responsibility of that board or a commission. So selecting the correct people. But an example that I have right now that is going on, with all of the fraud here in the state of Minnesota, the bulk of it is in the Department of Human Services. Our current governor has just named as the permanent commissioner someone that has been in that agency since 2017 as a compliance officer, where fraud has exploded in that particular agency. And then just a couple short months ago, the Office of Legislative Auditor, which is a nonpartisan office, in a finding in that same department, under that same person as an acting commissioner, found that there had been falsified and backdated documents in that audit report. And our current governor, just over a week ago, named that same person as the commissioner of DHS. No one has lost their job because of fraud in the state of Minnesota. Not for the lack of House Republicans wanting that to happen, but that is the attitude and the disrespect that our current administration is giving to taxpayers and our taxpayer dollars, and that ends with me. We have got to select the correct commissioners, and if there is fraud or anything under their watch, they are gone.
Mr. Knight.
An organization is only as good as its leader and the people he or she surrounds him or herself with. I was CEO of a manufacturing company. I hired people all the time. I did not hire based on seniority or pedigree. I hired based on capability, on competency, and on character. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. One of my favorite stories is from Henry Ford. He was testifying before Congress like in 1912 or something like that. And as he was testifying, a congressman interrupted him and said, "Mr. Ford, you think you're the smartest person in this room, don't you?" And he said, "I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but the 5 people who are all work for the Ford Motor Company." And that's my philosophy, is surround myself with the smartest people, smarter than me in their respective areas, the best and the brightest. And that's what we need to do with the state government. It's a culture that's got a rotted leadership culture. That's why the fraud occurs, not because they didn't have accounting standards or compliance standards. Those have been in place for decades. It's a culture of lackadaisical attitude. It's a culture of corruption. It's a culture of fraud. It starts with the people. And that's what we need to do. By the way, I'm taking applications. As I say that jokingly, but whatever I'm on the campaign trail, I'm always trying to meet people who are smarter than I in their respective areas. One of the things that President Trump did very well in the beginning of his second term, he had his team in place, in mind, before he was even elected. 1,800 people are a lot of people to find. We need to have the best, the brightest, the most rational, the most service-oriented leaders we can get and get them into the governor's office. Thank you.
And we will go right back to you, Patrick. And obviously, we've talked a decent amount about fraud here tonight, and specifically under Democrat leadership in Minnesota, what's happened with the fraud. So when you become governor, what is your plan to address and eliminate the current fraud? And looking back, if you had been governor during this term, how would you have responded to these issues, even if the wrongdoing involved members of your own party?
I would have hammered them. How many people here run a business? Raise your hand. All right, quite a number of you. What would happen if you hired a CEO and that person had thousands or tens of thousands, let alone millions of dollars of fraud occur? They would be out on the street, and they'd probably be being sued for civil liability, at the very least for breach of the fiduciary duty and the duty of care. Leadership starts at the top. It's not like the governor never heard of this fraud. In 2019, he saw the budgets for a lot of these programs that were supposed to be $3 million explode to $100 million. 2020 and 21, the whistleblowers, he ignored those. 2022, the Biden DOJ started indicting the fraudsters. He ignored those. 2024, Lisa and her team stood up the Fraud Oversight Committee. He basically blew that off. The Office of Legislative Audit came out with their reports. He blew that off. And it just goes on and on and on. This is incompetence. And unfortunately, a politician cannot be held liable for incompetence. The only solution is the ballot box. But in the private sector, the company I ran, nothing over $300 would go out the door unless there was a purchase order tied to an invoice. There's typically an underlying contract with the service provider that made sure that there was accurate representations and warranties, attestations that the service was lawful and was truly being provided. This is just basic leadership, basic management competency that was not done. So I think fraud is a big problem, easy fix, get a competent governor. Thank you.
Lisa.
Ending fraud in Minnesota is a commitment that I have made as governor day one. You've already seen my work with establishing the Fraud Prevention and Agency Oversight Committee as soon as I became speaker. And I'll tell you a little insight on that. When we were negotiating the organizational agreement, the Democrats didn't want me to name it the Fraud Prevention and Agency Oversight Committee. And they didn't want the focus on that. They said, you can do a little work on there, just don't call it that. I said, we will absolutely call it the Fraud Prevention Committee. That has drawn attention to it. We also did pass additional FTEs for the Office of Legislative Auditor, so those were 2 more people to work in that office. And so the work that I've already done as Speaker shows my commitment when given that authority to end fraud in the state of Minnesota. It will also be, as I've mentioned, holding commissioners accountable for the work that is being done. It's also in their agencies. It will also be basic standard accounting principles being brought back into every agency. My running mate Ryan Wilson ran for state auditor back in 2022. Remember I said there were 200,000 Republicans that didn't show up to vote? Ryan Wilson narrowly missed that by just 8,000 votes. He was already talking about fraud and needing to bring an end to it and couldn't get the traction. The Demuth Wilson ticket is ready to end fraud with accountability and a plan going forward from day one when we are finally in office.
You know, my friends, I think all of us in the private sector, we're used to quarterly reports that we have to then roll up each quarter to make sure that our budgets are aligned, revenues, our expenses, and we know when there's a gap and there's something missing. If it happens the second quarter consistently, then there's someone being investigated, and then there's typically embezzlement charges, and that person's out of the organization. It never lasts 9 years. During that time, we've had this happen, and again, I don't know how many of our Republicans voted for these bills as we've seen these departments and these budgets triple in growth. At a certain point, you got to say, I'm not voting for this because something's nefarious here. No one's doing anything about it. I don't know. I didn't hear about it. But the other part of this is leadership 101. The best prevention of fraud is the leadership part and holding people accountable on the front end. It's a front-end solution, not a back-end process. If you got to deal with this stuff always on the back end, then you have a front-end problem and something's corrupt in your organization. Good leaders weed that out instantly. And that's what we're going to get back to the basics. Correcting fraud is not we shouldn't be celebrating that, because that's what you should be doing in the first place as a functional organization. Okay? We should be celebrating job growth, that we got our communities back, are safe again, and then that new businesses are being started all over. Those are the things we should celebrate. The fraud issue is a direct stuff that we've been too complicit and compliant with the Democrats walking all over. So for me, it's time to go on the offense. Tired of playing the defense. This is why I'm running as someone who's not been in public office, because we haven't been able to get it done as a Republican Party for over 20 years.
And before we move on to the next question, I'm going to recognize Patrick Knight for 30 seconds.
It's not a rebuttal, it's more just a comment. I know through the legislature, the Republicans are trying to work on another department to oversee and prevent fraud. And I understand the intent behind that, but I think that is the wrong idea. We don't need more government, because if the Democrats are in control, it's just one more government entity they're going to ignore. We just need a strong governor that enforces the law. Thank you.
All right, and we will move on to the next question, and we will start with Mr. Qualls. Tax burdens in Minnesota have become increasingly difficult for families and businesses, and state mandates are placing added financial pressure on our cities and counties. As a result, many businesses, even longtime residents, especially retirees, are choosing to leave the state. How do you plan to specifically address overtaxation and relieve the fiscal strain that's driving people and employees out of our state?
My friends, I know I sound like a broken record, but the only way a governor can do this is if he has, or she, but I'm not a she. So the only way that I can do this is if I have the control of the Senate and the House. The Democrats are not going to negotiate with this. They're the resistance movement. We have to have control. The governor cannot lower taxes, regulations, all that on his own. They can't do an executive order on it. So we have to win. And when we do that, transformational tax reform that's going to spur the biggest job growth that we've had in this state in 50 years. Literally 50 years. We have a plan for it. I selected a running mate that came straight from the private sector, construction and jobs. He hired 300 people in the last 3 years. His business has been a revolving door of politicians visiting because they had such tremendous job growth despite the thumb the state has had on his business. They could have hired 400 in 3 years, but if it wasn't for the state. We know how to get this done. We need leaders in the right place to do it, and we need to have the energy and the plan to go after the 1 seat we need in the House and the 2 seats we need in the Senate to do it. That's how we got to do it. Again, guys, look, we're not being honest with you if you think we're just going to get the governor's seat and we can lower these taxes and change the Family Leave Act. We can't. We need bold action, bold strategies, and a bold new candidate.
Ms. Demuth.
Ending the tax on Social Security once and for all is something that we've been talking about. That is a commitment that I have made when elected as governor, that we will end the tax on Social Security. We are one of the outliers in that, just one of a handful of states that still does that. Right now, with the One Big Beautiful Bill, there are options where we could give tax conformity, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. We are not an automatic conformity state. We would have to have a bill and to opt into those things. That would make things much more affordable for our middle and lower middle income residents here in Minnesota. It is something that the current administration is not interested in, but when there are options given from the federal level that we could opt into in the state, that is something that we definitely should be looking at, and something that I am looking at doing even now in the last few weeks of the legislative session. The best way, though, that we can spread out that tax base is with job growth across the state. When we become a business-friendly environment where businesses can start and grow and thrive here in the state, that spreads out that tax base, and it's less pressure on just a few Minnesotans. And so making sure that we have an economy that will grow businesses and businesses will want to come here instead of being concerned with mandates that have been consistently put on them. Paid family leave, earn sick and safe time. Those are mandates that make it harder for businesses to choose Minnesota. We also have delays in our permitting, and we have to shrink that time so we can do effective permitting, but businesses shouldn't have to go over our borders just to get things done faster. We can do things better in Minnesota. That's how to grow our economy and lower taxes for every Minnesotan. Thanks.
Mr. Knight.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yes. Tax burdens in Minnesota have become increasingly difficult for families and businesses, and state mandates are placing added financial pressure on our cities and counties. As a result, many businesses and even longtime residents, including retirees, are choosing to leave the state. How do you specifically plan to address overtaxation and relieve the fiscal strain that's driving people away?
Well, the biggest problem is spending. State spending is out of control. 2023, we increased state spending by 40%, $18 billion, $12 billion of which was reoccurring. We do not have a revenue problem, we've got a spending problem. And one thing to keep in mind is that spending and results are two completely different things. Just because we spend money doesn't mean we're doing a good thing. What matters is the results. As anybody in the private sector knows, what matters is results, not good intentions, not the good virtue. What results are being delivered? And I think we need to go line by line and understand what is happening with our state spending. We need to take care of the truly vulnerable. That's one of the government's key responsibilities. But we need to get spending under control. When I ran my business, in my back of my mind, I always had, hey, if the difficulty came, I could always cut 10%. It would be very difficult to do. There are plenty of things that I did not want to get rid of, but if I needed to, I could really tighten the belt 10%. What can we do in the state government? Well, I know we can do better. I don't want to I've always been taught as a salesperson, under promise, over deliver, but there is massive opportunity. How do I know? Just look at the fraud numbers. But the issue we've got is spending. We've got to get spending under control. You all live within your means. The state needs to do the same. Thank you.
And we will move to the next question, and we will start with you, Patrick. Minnesota has lost many farmers in the past year, even though agriculture makes up roughly 15% of our state's economy. Farmers say regulations such as buffer strip requirements and feedlot permitting are making it harder to stay in business. What approach would you take to address these challenges and support the long-term viability of Minnesota's farming community?
I was down in Dodge County, down by Rochester, last Thursday night, talking to some people, and there is just massive distrust of the state government. They feel like the state government focuses on the metro area, and within the metro area, just specific groups that are favored. They see their tax money going to the state capital, and it's just a big, dark hole. They don't see any of the benefits. Their roads are deteriorating. Their bridges are deteriorating. We need to treat farmers like the very sophisticated business people they are, because they're not just dealing with local issues, they're dealing with geostrategic issues. Their markets are affected by what's going on across the world. And so the challenges they face are even greater than the typical company. But it gets back to building an economy that thrives. We need a better tax rate. We've got if we want to increase business, it's not enough to reduce Social Security. That doesn't do anything for growing the economy. We need to reduce marginal tax rates and migrate down to a flat tax. We need to get regulations under control, whether it's the Family Medical Leave Act or the Earned Sick and Safe Time Act. Those are issues that affect farmers. And by the way, there's no exemption under the Paid Family Medical Leave Act for small businesses. There should be, but there's a heavy-handed nature to state regulations, whether it's through the Minnesota Pollution Control Act or the department or DNR. It's a one-size cookie-cutter approach that's focused on the metro and solutions in the metro, but they are treating rural Minnesotans in a way that just disadvantages them compared to farmers in other states. So they're sophisticated businessmen, and we need to help them grow their businesses.
Ms. Demuth.
I met with a local potato farmer in my area, just a little bit, so central Minnesota, think of that. The struggle that they were finding is they needed to put in irrigators in order to irrigate their crop. We've got great potato land in central Minnesota. It's perfect conditions for it, but the DNR was blocking them from putting irrigators in because of a trout stream that 40 years ago had non-native trout put into that stream, and they couldn't do a water drawdown on it. They weren't going to deplete the stream in any way. That is where I talk about having commissioners that will work together. We can't have a great ag commissioner that is going to want to see farms go forward and producers go forward and then have that work impeded by another commissioner that is going to talk about non-native trout being put in a trout stream that never existed before. That is the common sense that we need to bring back to it. The other piece, though, that I'll talk about, I had another chance to talk with some dairy farmers just recently, and they want to pass those farms on to the next generation. But in Minnesota, we have a tax structure that makes that nearly impossible. Passing on businesses, whatever they are, needs to be able to happen easily in Minnesota instead of making it more difficult. So you have people that are value the agriculture work that they do, that want to continue their family farm, but they have to get jobs outside of the farm in order to support their families. We need to restructure the way that we do capital gains tax, the way that we do other passing on of business corporate taxes, and then make sure that we're not having agencies come in and make that work harder for our turkey producers, our dairy farmers, and our crop farmers across the state. We have great farmland, different in the south than it is in the north, but we can do it better in Minnesota if we would work together on it.
Our agribusiness in the state of Minnesota is $26 billion annually. It's either the second or third largest industry in the state any given year. But those people are treated like second-class citizens. Our agribusiness is probably number 5 or 6 in the country. It's huge. But we have people that work in the Department of Agriculture that don't even know about their business. I got a chance to visit a dairy farm in Murdoch, Minnesota. These guys started this new dairy farm there, operation. It took them 18 months to get the permit. Up and running, they were up and running, happy with everything, and the business was going well, the dairy farm was doing well. They wanted to do another one in Minnesota. Same operation, same specs. Now that permit was not 18 months, but 36 months. That time is money. That's like a tax. You can't let capital stay around that long and have your operation waiting 3 years. They opened it in South Dakota in 12 months. And now 300 jobs left the state of Minnesota and went to another state. Again, when they tell you they're Democrat socialists, believe them. This is an ideology issue more than anything else. This is not working together, that type of thing. I'm proud to have the endorsement of a third-generation dairy farmer, Dana Allen Tully, who used to be the president of the Corn Growers Association. She'll be part of my team and become on, because the people that do this business are the ones that should be inside government giving direction. And the idea that the PCA has the same level of decision-making as the Department of Agriculture, I think reorganization is needed. Look, guys, we've been running our business and running our government like we have been since for the last 50 years. Organizations change. They make organizational structural change because the market changes. We need that type of innovation and leadership in state government as well, and I'm going to bring it.
Thank you. And our last question before we get into our closing remarks is a two-part question, and we'll start with Mr. Qualls. Do you support the legislative practice of passing large omnibus bills? And do you support reforms to ensure greater transparency and accountability?
Well, you're getting ahead of me there. So first of all, I'm making a public pledge that we should only have single-issue bills, no massive spending bills. That's the way the founders wanted. That's the way we should do it. I wouldn't sign any of these big spending bills. They're hiding behind the issues by signing these big omnibus bills and not being accountable on what's in them. This is one of the reasons why we've got this fraud as we are. We've been funding this, and it's been signed off even by some of the members of our own party, and it's wrong.
Speaker Demuth.
In 2024, the last night of session, there was a 1,400-page bill that was passed. It was not available online. It was not available in print. And we were in the minority, and there was nothing that we could do about it. I had a press conference earlier today, and I assured everyone at that press conference that you will not see a 1,400-page bill come through the House of Representatives this year. I fully believe in transparency in government. Bills should be single subject. That can be multiple bills, but if they're under the same area of law, it can include other provisions. That's what we are pushing for this year in the legislature, and I will continue to do so as governor. The other thing the governor has the opportunity to do is line item veto. That is something that we have not seen happen in the last 8 years, and it is absolutely something that can and should be used when appropriate. Thank you.
Mr. Knight.
You know, one of the key roles of the executive, whether it's the president, a governor, or a mayor, is to effectively execute the laws. The governor's job is not to write legislation. That's the role of a legislator or the legislature. The executive's role is to effectively execute the laws. It's not a buffet table where you just go up and choose to enforce the law, this law today, and enforce that law tomorrow. It does not work that way. The reason I bring that up is it's in the Minnesota Constitution to have single-issue laws, and we are not following the law. One of the reasons why it's structured that way is because the governor has the right, as Lisa mentioned, to veto individual laws. You can't do that when there's an omnibus bill with hundreds of pages or hundreds of pages, if not thousands of pages, and multiple laws in it. We need to follow the law. We need to follow the rule of law. That's how functioning societies work, and for whatever reason, we've gotten away from that. And then your other part of the question, Taylor, was transparency and accountability, not just on the law, but just on how a governor governs. People distrust government. They trust any organization when it's not transparent or not accountable. We are just the perfect case study for an organization that has very little transparency and very little accountability. No wonder the people of Minnesota don't trust the state government. We need to get back to transparency and accountability. That's why I've run my business, and I'm sure those of you in the private sector do the same thing. Thank you.
All right, we will move into our closing remarks where each candidate will get 3 minutes. We will be starting with Patrick Knight, and the candidates are allowed to use this 3 minutes however they like, but I will tee them up if they would like to take this. Minnesota Democrats have won every statewide race since 2006. What makes you the candidate who will be the one to break that streak and put a Republican in the governor's seat, and how will you help strengthen and carry the Republican ticket across the state?
But before you start the clock, so are you asking me, is that a separate question?
No, it's your closing marks. Feel free to use that as a tee-up or ignore it.
Okay, I'll stick with my planned remarks. But for Taylor, great job tonight. Thanks for hosting, and thanks to all of you for being here. Yeah, I ended my opening with 2 questions. Who can win by expanding the base? And once in office, who's best capable to deliver results for the people of Minnesota? One thing I know is we do not need more of the same. We've lost 20 years in a row. What we need is a governor who takes responsibility and gets Minnesota working again. Minnesota families are struggling. It's harder to afford a home, harder to find a good job. Parents worry whether their kids are getting a good education. Neighborhoods feel less safe. Minnesotans are not asking for perfection. You're asking for honesty, competency, accountability, leaders who follow through on what they say they're going to do. And that's why I'm running for governor. I am not a career politician. I'm a veteran. I'm a business guy. I'm a father and a coach. I've spent most of my adult life stepping into difficult situations, taking ownership, and fixing what's not working. I've managed budgets. I've built good teams. And I've delivered results, not just talk about it. That's the role of governor: leadership and execution. Too much of politics today is about political theater, posturing, sometimes seniority, sometimes insider status. But the role of governor is not a prize. It's not a ceremonial position. It's a substantive, serious job managing a $70 billion biennial budget, 55,000 employees that affects almost 6 million Minnesotans. It's a job about stewardship, making sure your tax dollars are spent wisely, that your economy is creating jobs, your schools are delivering results, and that your freedoms are protected. And what we need today is a governor who shows up, rolls up his sleeves, sets the correct priorities, and gets the job done, gets results. And that's what I did as a Marine Corps officer for 20 years. That's what I did as a CEO of a manufacturing company. And that's what I did as a parent and a coach. So if you want more of the same, I'm not your guy. But if you want a serious, steady conservative who's got the leadership of a Marine, the competency of a CEO, the fundamentals of a coach, and who's got a history of delivering results, and who will fight like hell on the fundamentals, I'd love your vote. I'd love your support. Thank you.
Speaker Demuth.
Minnesota has the opportunity of a lifetime ahead of us in November to come together as Republicans and choose a candidate that can go up against whatever Democrat is going to be on the ticket in November. This is our opportunity. I have had proven results in unifying Republicans. I can unify Republicans and bring us together, which is why I decided early on to abide by the endorsement, because I value the grassroots and I value the opportunity that we have ahead of us. There are common sense things, and it is time for us to turn this state back around and make it stronger and better than where we find ourselves today, but building on what has been so good for us in the past in a new vision. Affordability includes growing our businesses, expanding the opportunities, lowering taxes so Minnesotans all across our state can afford their lives. The hope and the vision to improve our educational system here in the state of Minnesota can happen. We can deliver an excellent education that we used to be known for, but that's been lost along the way, to make sure that our next generation, our future workforce, is prepared and ready to go. I support life from conception until natural death, and I will always value that and support that. That is no question. I support our constitutional rights, including our Second Amendment rights that shall not be infringed. I have supported that my entire time in office and will continue to do so. We've talked a lot about fraud, and we have an opportunity together to end fraud in the state of Minnesota once and for all and protect our tax dollars so they go to the most vulnerable and the areas that are intended for those tax dollars to go to. I am not afraid of a hard fight. I've sat as the only Republican in a room of Democrats negotiating to deliver to our state $5 billion in a tax reduction, ending taxpayer-funded illegal immigrant health care, and protecting non-public education from cuts that we knew were coming. I am ready to go to fight and to work for the state of Minnesota, for every single resident here and those yet to come, because it matters to make Minnesota stronger and better together. I'm Lisa Demuth. I am seeking your vote. Thank you.
My friends, I shocked my family when I turned 18 years old and registered to vote. In the state where I lived, you had to declare a party, and I declared the Republican Party. And I said, "What did you do?" Just during the Reagan administration. I registered as a Republican, never looked back. I didn't know any Republicans. I didn't have a country club membership, but I knew what the Democrat Party stood for, and I didn't want anything with it. But it's over the course of time, growing up, I just looked at politics in the periphery, just a sideline. I remember when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House in 1994. We had tremendous government overreach, and he rallied the Republicans around an agenda that transformed the Republican Party at that time. And if you remember that time, he had an agenda called the Contract with America. And for the first time in 40 years, the House of Representatives flipped to the Republican Party, and he was able to hold the Democrats accountable and get just responsible governance back into Washington, D.C. He did that with a bold agenda. My friends, we're at the same juncture here in our state. This is why I intentionally selected a candidate, a running mate, that was outside politics, a business leader. And we have developed the contract with Minnesota. There's copies of these back here. When you leave, you can get this. This is a bold agenda. A lot of it we talked about tonight. 15 items that we guarantee that we'll do in the first 2 years to those people that put us in office. We're going to need people outside the party. We don't have enough Republicans to win statewide. We got to win swing voters. We got to appeal to people in the middle. And there are people in the metro that are suffering Democrats that live in Twin Cities, that want safe communities, that want better schools, that want to see a robust economy, and this agenda has it laid out specifically. Contract with Minnesota. It worked for Newt Gingrich and to get control in 40 years. We can get control since 1969. I have a copy of this if you're watching this on Alpha News on my website, or go to contractwithminnesota.com. My friends, if we want something different, we've got to do something different. We have to do it in a bold way. And this is the way we do things in the private sector, a commitment to deliver. And this is what this campaign is all about. Thank you so much.
And before we break for the night, I just want to thank a few different people and groups. First off, thank you to the leadership in the 2nd District Republicans here for putting on this debate. Thank you to Bogarts here in Apple Valley for being fantastic hosts. Thank you to Alpha News for being here. It's a great organization, Alpha News, from top down. And thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you all who are watching online, and most importantly, thank you to our 3 candidates for taking the time to be here, and more importantly, for stepping up and working to make Minnesota a great state and to get us back on track. Thank you.